right, thanks, Christian. Okay, so with that, let's officially start the 16th town hall session. Good to see you all today. And thank you for attending. My name is Jonas, and I'll be today's host. And today, and as we always do, we have prepared a small agenda, which in a moment I'll walk you through. But before doing so, I just want to inform you that if you have any comments or questions, feel free to share them with us in the chat. Or you can also, if you feel like it, join us on stage for a conversation. So, yeah, on that note, I'll just share my screen so we can briefly go through the agenda. Just see here. Here it is. All right. So, today we have three topics. We start out with a take update, where we currently are, what we have done, and also what the plans are for the rest of the year. Then next we will talk about a recent comparison we did of Tagion, comparing it to other decentralized networks, how we compare to them. And then finally, we will do a documentation review of all white papers and also about how what's going to happen forward. We're gonna move a lot of it into the docs pages. So that's the agenda for today. We'll start with Carsten giving us a short update on the tech side. So yeah, Carsten, I'll just keep sharing my screen. And yeah, then if you can talk a bit about the accomplishments and also the roadmap for the rest of the year.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, we are working on two different, you can say, main tracks. One is the distribution. So what we're actually working on, and right now is to, oh, I can hear myself. It's very annoying. Uh, um, I still hear myself. Okay. Um, so what we're working on is the actual distribution of the network, so we can run on different, you can say, machine and catch up the network and all this. So this is what we call mode 2, and we are pretty far with that actually. And we are also making a test, sort of a participant test network or node where people can try it out. But we'll when we have more information about it, we'll uh, talk about this, or we'll explain about this, how to do this. And then we are working on the virtual machine, which is uh, how you can actually program it, because now it's difficult to actually make smart contracts. So we are making a way to make it easier also, because we get more and more projects in, and it's we want to have more participants who work with the network. So it has been planned for a long time, but it's like the top of the cherry, you can say, because it's not really, how can I say it? It's not really difficult or essential. It's just for what is essential is to get the consensus to work. The virtual machine is done before. So we have now spent like half a year on building a new virtual machine. So yeah, so that's actually what we are doing right now. And we are coming with some new stuff end of May, and then we hope that we can have some distribution where people can actually participate also. So yeah, that's actually sort of what we are working on. You are also muted, so I'll be muted.
Okay, I muted myself. I didn't realize. But maybe just then to sum up what you're saying, Carsten, for the roadmap. So it's roadmap you have covered right now. We start out with the TBM you tell for me, which is making it possible for people to start creating simple measurement instructions, or maybe in more in layman's term, creating simple applications on the network or making it more easy for them to do that. And that's something we plan to have ready by the end of May. Is that correct?
End of May, you will have a test. You can actually write uh, systems. You can write, you can start to use it, but it's not completely finished because we are also making application SDK. Oh, I can still hear myself. SDK, so you can use the network. Because right now you actually have to. I still hear myself. That's super. Um, yeah, because I don't know what I'm saying actually. Did I say what I said? It was somebody else. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so you can write. What was I actually talking about? I don't know what I was talking about. So, yeah. Yeah. So you can now start to write rules, uh, smart contracts, which does things what we actually have to, what we're actually doing internally right now. But it's like in a user application. It's more easy to actually write the rules, and we are putting more and more of the governments into this system. So it's getting more flexible because some of the government rules we have now right now is hardwired, but we want to put them in so they are in the database. This means that the community can also later on change them or update them in when they have consensus on them.
For the distributed testing for Q2, what that means, to my understanding, it is that people from the outside potentially could participate in running a node. And is that correct? So that's a way for us to actually involve the community a
Yeah,
bit.
it's because we actually need what we would like if the community wants to contribute. What we need to set up a lot of machines and to actually test the network. So we would like people to be able to participate. So we will set up so they can actually run a node. It's still a test, but we can then make all kind of robustness tests, tags, vectors, and so on. And we will then use this information to um, uh, put it into the production network. So that's and will help us develop this also.
Yeah, very good. And also briefly, the accomplishments, what we have done for the past month or two. Could you also just briefly summarize that?
Yeah, actually, what we have done right now, which we have used uh, some time on, was now we can actually synchronize the database remotely, and we can also catch up on the voting graph remotely. So this is the first step to actually get the network completely distributed, because we need the consensus. When the problem is that when you have it's it's easy, you can say, when you have everybody's running and we agree on it. But if you want to join from outside, then the mechanism you have to catch up to the other active nodes, and then there have to be an agreement when you're in and out, and then you have to go into a part of the action node voting. And this we have actually used a lot of work on to do this, and this is partly what is part of what the part of node two, and node two is then mode two, and mode two is then also the testing where we will like to test this. So yeah, and then of course we have worked a lot on the virtual machine. So it's in principle two parallel tracks.
Yeah. So maybe to sum up, we're sort of at a breaking point where the next step would be to involve people more in actually running the network, building upon the network, both by running nodes, but also or at least helping distribute the network, but also by enabling to them to build their own solutions on top. Would that
Yes,
be
correct.
yeah,
That's correct.
yeah,
Yes.
good. All right. I don't know if there's any questions to this or if there's anything that Thijs Lander wants to add.
That are now coming, what Carsten described from the technical side, they were also already met from a governance perspective. So if you remember on the documentation about governance, I'll post the link in the chat now. We have specified a few release phases that takes us to the decentralization of the system. So the tests that Carsten talked about for the next quarter, they are basically the closed release. So the first phase of releasing the system from a centrally run system to a distributed system and then to a decentralized system. So what we're getting into in the next quarter is the closed release. And then when the upgrade production system to mode 2 towards the end of the year, that next phase in the roadmap, that would then take us to the limited release where other parties can join and actually run nodes as if they were self-managed, but still with Descartes kind of curating that whole process. And um, we call it by invitation only, so there will be a communication process before, and you can't just do that and start. You have to engage with us first and be vetted, and then you become part of that limited release system. And yeah, once that is done and mode 2 is safely running in a distributed way, then we can get to mode 3 and the next step towards decentralization, where we're also then testing the governance system and testing it in the wild, so to say, so then you can by yourself sign up, run a node, and become part of the network. And all our processes will be implemented and being tested for the point when we can safely call it a decentralized system and it's all self-governed.
Yeah, thank you for that,
So
Lander. Um, I'm also yeah. So you just posted a link to the phase release schedule. I'm also gonna add another link, which is a list of what we have done so far and what's up next on the tech side, so you can follow along if you want to. All right. I think then we will continue on to the next topic for today, which is the comparison of decentralized systems, more specifically We have done some research into other systems and compared them to Tagion. That includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Sui, Hedera, and actually also private permission networks like R3's Corda and Hyperledger Base. So, but for this small session, we'll just focus on the public networks. And this is a very this is just a general overview. It's not that in depth. I'll try to keep it high level. Um, but one way to envision how Tekken differs from some of these other networks is by dividing these different networks into classes, or more specifically, generations. There's first generation decentralized networks, there's second generation decentralized networks, and then there's third generation decentralized networks. So for the first category, first generation decentralized networks, which include Bitcoin and Ethereum, um, for in a lot of ways they work really well, and what they have done is they have done some great achievements, no doubt about that, but there still are a lot of limitations to them. So for instance, one thing is limited decentralization. So there is a limit as to how decentralized these systems can become. And there are some tendencies within these systems to centralize over time. I'm not going to go into that right now, but I'm just gonna mention it. So there is limited decentralization. Another thing holding these systems back is that there is minimal data control. So all the activities done on these networks are publicly visible. Um, it's possible for other people or entities to analyze your activities, and from that deduce what you are doing, what counterparties you have as a business, etc. And also there is the limitation of you not having control of the data, in the sense that you cannot delete it or alter it. So in that sense, there's minimal data control. Then another thing is the low throughput. So as most people somewhat familiar with crypto or decentralized networks would know, Bitcoin and Ethereum has a very low throughput, understood in the sense that they cannot handle a lot of transactions. So if in some periods there is a lot of transactions, and that just translates into congestion, long processing times, long settlement times, and also high fees. So that is a huge bottleneck for users. Um, and then there is slow finality, understood. And by that I mean it takes a long time, or at least a fairly long time, for transactions to settle on these networks. And then finally, there is manipulable TX ordering. So on both Ethereum and Bitcoin, it's possible for so-called block proposers, block leaders to reorder transactions in a way that benefit them. So there are these ideas of front-running sandwich attacks, all kinds of esoteric attacks on users of these networks, where at the end of the day, it's just the users that really pay the price of this manipulable TX ordering. All right, so that's like an overview of first generation. Then the thing is with the second generation blockchains, which among others include Solana, Sui, and Hedera. Some of these you probably know. Um, they managed to solve problems in regards to manipulable TX ordering, so they don't have that problem anymore. They don't have the problem of slow finality, and they don't have the problem of low throughput. but they do have the problems of minimal data control. So for the users, there is a lack of privacy when it comes to the data, and also at least for Solana and Sui, it's not possible for users to delete data on a network level. And they also suffer from limited decentralization. Um, so for these second generation decentralized networks, they have managed to scale, but they have done so by, for instance, um, increasing the hardware requirements for node operators, meaning that only you know, capital rich entities are actually able to run a node. Or conversely, they have simply they have proof of stake, and you need a lot of money to actually or currencies, these virtual currencies, to actually participate in the consensus process. So due to these circumstances, you have rather decent or rather centralized networks, and without um, fine-grained data control. So that's the second generation, and then we have the third generation, and that's where we find Tagion. So we have managed to solve all the same problems as second generation um, decentralized systems. So we have managed to remove manipulable TX ordering. We have managed to increase finality time. We have managed to increase low throughput. But on top of that, we also have granted the users full data control. So the users are able to fully control who they share their data with, and also both from a read and write perspective. So you can enable other parties access to your data on chain, to read that data, but you can also give them access to actually update the data or sign the data. So in that sense, on a network level, on like on a protocol level, we have full data control, and that's something, at least to our knowledge, I would say, no none other decentralized network is able to offer. So that's one thing. We also have um, actually, well, while we are at this, I also want to really emphasize that this grants the users a high level of privacy. So data ownership, data sovereignty, they can do with the data as they want. Um, and this also includes deleting data. So that's actually also why we tend to describe Tagion not as a distributed ledger technology, but rather something more akin to a database, distributed database. Probably there still needs to be done some framing on this, what actually to call it, because we are qualitatively different compared to these other systems. And then there is the other thing about also increasing decentralization. And one way we do this is by significantly lowering the hardware requirements, meaning that it becomes a lot more easy to operate a node and participate in consensus. Yeah. Then here at the end, I also just want to briefly mention the things called modularity and federated subsystems and unmatched throughput. Um, so for modularity and federated subsystems, what we mean by that is simply that we have separated execution, consensus, and storage layers from each other. So instead of having this monolithic network, the monolithic system where it's difficult to update only one part, we actually have divided into a lot of small parts where it's easier to update only a fraction of a part of the system. So that relates to modularity. And then we have federated subsystem, which grants the users the ability to set up a um, subsystem with their specific logic and features. So if you are a company looking for a decentralized network with really really high throughput, able to process thousands and thousands, hundreds and thousands transactions per second, you can do so through by setting up your own federated subsystem, and that's also why we have said here at the bottom that it offers unmatched throughput, because at the end of the day, on these federated subsystem, the only limitation is essentially hardware. So you can really scale the system to suit your needs. Um, so yeah, I hope this gives you a small idea of how we differ from other decentralized networks, and I think at least based on this research, and of course we also knew that before, but I think this really just made it even more apparent that in especially when it comes to data and decentralization, we have a rather unique product. So that's really positive. Yeah, you want to say something, Taj?
I think that's a very good explanation and comparison. Jonas and also the whole team spent a lot of time actually trying to compare and learn from other systems. And if we look at the modularity in federated systems and throughput, right, as you say, it's modular, but also as Carsten mentioned before, also on the governance side. So the mainnet, or whatever we call the Tagion system, like the top of the system, so to speak, where you have the community governance governing the main system. There you have a set of governance rules and features or functions that work in there, basically, that is approved. But then you can create your own subsystem, right? Of course, those three elements technically are divided, but also the governance rules, as you're mentioning before, you can also decide which kind of governance rules do I have it in or in mine, a subsystem, basically. What are both the rules for transactions or whatever, the deletion of data, and also which features or functions are allowed in the system. Um, and that also means subsystem has their own database, basically. So it's not like you having the same data in the same chain or database for that matter. It's divided up, right? And that's also how you can actually divide up the data to the different purposes or applications that are intended to use them. And that is pretty unique and very smart. So that's just a comment.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I will also add two little
Mhm.
things, Jonas. I think you have to mute yourself, thanks. And just for the framing, also because a lot of people are watching these videos afterwards and then can't ask questions, or I would have to ask in the Discord channels, and that's sometimes a bit clunky. So just to say or to anticipate that, particularly what you presented for the first generation systems, or the bullet points we put there, limited decentralization, for example, that might strike a few people as a surprising statement, where decentralization is what Bitcoin had introduced to the world, basically, and a lot of people still believe in it and hold it as the hallmark of decentralization. And when we say it's limited, we have very good reasons, and as Jonas says, that can be explained further. But yes, those are surprising statements. And yes, we feel very confident in having a good basis for that, but just to anticipate a lot of people being a bit surprised by that. And the other thing, maybe to say, we didn't make this comparison to present it now in just 10 minutes, but this was also spurred by our interactions with clients and potential clients and partners that we reach out to, where we found ourselves continuously having to explain how we are different, because a lot of people have been burned and disappointed by existing systems, and our system isn't particularly easy to explain to them, and it's often really hard to wade through the terminology that's been basically co-opted by existing examples. There's a lot of confusion and basically wrong uses of terminology there, and to educate people at the same time while trying to tell them how we're different and how we work was an exercise that led us to look a bit deeper again after so many years of course, knowing of the other system, having looked at them before, but really going to the next level, saying, okay, here's another narrative where we can compare ourselves, and here are the features and elements where we are clearly different from what people might have seen before. So we trust that you trusted us in being special and different on all these counts, but we just developed a better way of explaining how this differences actually comes about, and also moving a little further away from the discourse as it used to be, using words more concisely. Our manifesto presented a few town halls back also goes a long way towards saying this is what we mean by decentralization. These are the things that are important to us. Never mind what other people claim about this. When we put our values in that direction, we really mean it in the very concise and or precise way, and we'll hold ourselves to fulfilling this. But it's all a great segue to the next topic, so I'll leave it there for you to wrap this one up, and I'll continue with the next one.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emma. I actually don't think there's too much to add for this topic. So unless there are any questions, which doesn't seem to be the case, I'll just hand it back to you.
Great, thank you. Did you make a slide for my part? Otherwise, I'll just share my screen just to illustrate a little bit.
I didn't know. I'll just there we go.
Cool. Just a second. Let me pick the right one. Share this, and that's probably going to the wrong tab now. So this is really just now showing our online documentation. And so this last topic was about reviewing our documentation, and you can see it in a way of actually updating what we published before and moving it away from PDFs as before onto the online system that we have for a long time used for the technical documentation, and as per the last few town halls also started as the documentation site for the governance development and the governance documentation for what we are implementing. So when I'm saying moving away from PDFs, you might have followed the last town hall as moving away from the tokenomics paper that was published last year and actually putting this in the governance development and here governance area token economy. This is where you now find in this section and the following pages, you'll find everything that was once described in the tokenomics paper. Now it's online. And we're going to do the same basically with everything that was talked about in the currently called technical concept paper. And to that, you will realize a lot what is in these PDF. In that PDF from last year, the last updated version is a lot. There's a lot of redundancy what you find on the tech pages. But again, also there is a lot of redundancy because we had to wrap it all into one PDF, what we now talk about in the governance papers. In the governance pages. There won't be any papers anymore. So what we wanted to do with this session here and this part of the town hall is really just to inform you that there will be updates. We are going to take the PDF versions off the websites. There will only be links to these online documentation pages. And then you will find everything that was once published in PDF format somewhere on this docs.tagion.org site. Some of them naturally will be on the tech side of things. Some will be on the governance side of things. Some things we've published previously might be outdated, might have been superseded by other ideas. Some of it was just illustrations that we realized weren't so helpful. All these things will be somehow captured and referred to. Of course, the old PDFs will always be archived and you can access them just to follow us through the years and our own thinking of development. But the current version of everything will be on these pages. And this, of course, then also goes, and that is how it dovetails with the comparison that Jonas presented on in our general narrative of what Tagion is and what Tagion does. I guess to wrap it in a short way, when we started off, there was a lot of comparing us to Bitcoin, comparing us to blockchain. Now we realize that might not be the best way to actually start off in new conversations and even educating old followers on what it actually is and how it actually works. So there will be a new narrative about really concisely saying how Tagion defines itself, which points more directly towards what it is actually good for. And it is different from many copycat blockchain systems, not just good for having another token. Yes, we do have a token, but that's really not all that it is about, but really pointing towards more use case scenarios and even industry applications of it, so that you and everybody else following and new partners and commercial clients that we talk to quickly get what we are actually talking about, what it's good for. So this is something that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks, and the next town halls will of course inform you of the progress there. And don't be surprised if links on the website start to not go to a PDF anymore, but will start going to these online pages and will be very granular, then taking you from headline narratives down to the technical details, and also to the legacy of these details or these technical implementations from our first kind of thinking and outdated ideas to actually the current version as it is now. And yeah, then we're confident that it'll get a lot easier and better to follow and to understand what Tagion is and does.
Very good. Thank you for that,
Yeah,
Lena.
I think that's great. I cannot even remember what was necessarily in the first papers either myself. So I think it's very good we clean them up and get them all documented on the docs page. I think it's wonderful, and have the actual documentation there, and not just and then of course you can always write ideas or blogs or papers on but the actual documentation on the system is actually in the docs, and I think it's much easier for others than, except if you need to go through, I don't know, 5 papers to figure out where we are, or maybe not even figure that out, then it's so that's very nice.
It's a great exercise also to realize the wealth of thinking and documentation that there had been. I mean, the first papers were published in 2018, 19, 2020. Then we started to go from conceptual papers to actually technical papers. They've been updated a number of times, and then not too long ago they were wrapped again into this technical concept paper, where we needed to tell the narrative and introduce it to new people, and really give the headlines of it, while also explaining hashgraph protocols and all the details all in a few pages. That was of course very dense, and now on the online pages it'll be much easier to follow the lead towards what you're actually interested in and scroll back out or zoom back out into the grand narrative and really see what it is and what it can do. So yeah, that's exciting and coming up next.
Indeed. All right. Are there any questions or comments before we close the shop? I don't think so. But if you have any comments or questions, you can always post them in the here in Discord. We'll make sure to reply to them. And otherwise you can also ask them on the next town hall session, which will be on the 5th of June, so in a month. Same place, same time. So hope to see you all there. Thank you for attending today, and hopefully see you in a month. Until then.
Thanks all. Have a nice weekend.